All right, so we're back, and now that we've gotten through all five of the stages, let's talk a little bit about what it means to have a fixation. If our parents over or underindulged our needs at any one of our earlier stages, that will cause us to leave some psychic energy behind at that earlier stage, and as an adult, we'll display behaviors that were appropriate to that earlier stage. I shouldn't say if our parents over or underindulged us at any stage. I should probably say because our parents over or underindulged us at some stage, because it's next to impossible that they could have possibly perfectly met our needs, since the needs aren't that obvious. So let's go through the stages and explain how things manifest themselves. Okay, so now with the oral stage, I have a picture of somebody smoking to illustrate how in adulthood we might be able to say, oh, that person might have left some psychic energy behind at the oral stage because they're displaying an oral behavior. They're smoking, they're drinking water all the time, or drinking alcohol to excess, or they are eating a lot, or they talk a lot, or they chew gum all the time. Anything having to do with the mouth like that would be a behavioral, piece of evidence that the person has left some psychic energy behind. But personality-wise, not just purely behavioral, but personality-wise, we would see evidence of dependence, where the person as an adult is having difficulty making their own decisions, establishing themselves out in the world. They kind of look to other people to help them get through things that as an adult they should get through on their own. To give you an example of something that you might maybe possibly have experienced if you're an adult and you've ever had a car accident, and then called your parents instead of calling the insurance company first. I mean, I know when I was a freshman in college, so I was 18, so theoretically I was an adult. I got rear-ended at a stoplight, and first person I called was my mom. Now an adult might have gotten the number off of the back of the insurance card in their glove box and called them first. But I called my mom. And that's a little bit of a dependent behavior. Like, it's not her responsibility to take care of my car accident, right? Now the fact that I was, financially dependent probably muddies my example a little bit. But that's an example where, as an adult, you should know what to do and you should be able to take care of yourself, according to Freud. He says you should start doing that at puberty. So certainly by the time I was 18, I should have been doing that. But I called my mom. So and I talk a lot also. So I have two pieces of evidence. I might be a little bit fixated at the oral stage. I also really like to chew gum. I don't smoke, thank goodness, and I don't drink alcohol too much. But I do have a sugar problem. Like, I love hard candies, right? Like, how oral fixation can you get but to like to suck on hard candies? So I'm going to say my needs were not met at the oral stage. Now, what does it mean to say that your needs were not met at the oral stage? Well, that means either you were weaned too early or you were weaned too late. That's the trick with the oral stages. It could go either direction, right? So if you were weaned and I know for a fact that my mom is very proud of the fact that she had me drinking from a cup, and not a sippy cup, but a cup at 12 months. So I know for a fact it was like her goal to get me onto a regular cup, and I was not allowed to have a pacifier. I sucked my thumb for a little while, but I don't think I was still sucking my thumb by that point. So pretty much I was deprived of all the sucking kinds of things that normally Freud says you would be doing till you're 18 months. I was deprived of those by 12 months. And so that might be the source of my oral fixation. It was too early for me. On the other hand, if you have a child who's, well past 18 months and they still suck their thumb, or they're still using a pacifier, or their mom still puts them down with a bottle for their nap time or something, this could lead to an oral fixation on the other side where you've weaned too late. So, all right, I have found a little cartoon. I know I don't look cool, but it's the only thing that has helped me stop smoking, right? So I've switched one orally fixated behavior for another orally fixated behavior. Now I'm going to throw my mom under the bus a little bit more, her and my dad both, because they were smokers when I was a kid. And they both decided to stop smoking literally a month after I left the house. I moved out, and after 18 years of complaining about their smoking, they decided both to quit right as I left the house. And my mom likes to tell the story that as I was leaving the house, I'm carrying my last stuff out, and I look over my shoulder and I go, "You guys are probably going to stop smoking now that I'm out of the house, aren't you?" And they were like, that's actually, they must have looked at each other and said, "That's actually a really good idea," because they did. They literally stopped smoking the month after I left. Anyhoozle, except for that, then they switched on to other orally fixated behaviors. They used Nicorette gum to help them with the nicotine cravings. And then my mom, they slowly weaned off the Nicorette gum. And my mom she had been cutting it with one piece of Nicorette gum. Okay, half a piece of Nicorette gum. Okay, a quarter a piece of Nicorette gum. And then she'd bulk it up with regular gum. So that by the end, she was just chewing gum. And she was chewing gum all the time. And my dad was not quite as virtuous as my mom. He went from the Nicorette gum onto Skull Bandit tobacco pouches. He didn't do quite as well as my mom on the transition, but he ultimately got off the Skull Bandit also. But both just a lot of oral fixation and, sunflower seed eating, cracking the shells and spitting them. And I mean, really a lot of oral behavior going on there. So they must not have been properly weaned either. If you are overindulged during the anal stage or underindulged during the anal stage, you get different outcomes. So what you're seeing in this picture, this guy who's so carefully trimming his grass with the little tiny scissors to make sure they're exactly the same length blades, this is a person who was too rigidly potty trained. So well before 18 months, his mom successfully had him potty trained. And so he's displaying too much control in his personality. And the behaviors that we can look to as evidence of over control are, excessive neatness. Like everybody should be, a little neat, right? Like you should know where to find your stuff. But he has, his spice rack alphabetized, and he's got, his, closet is organized, like way beyond what any normal person would do for organization. And he gets really upset if anybody puts something in there out of order, like really excessive about it. You guys might refer to this as OCD, but Freud calls this anal retentive. This kind of behavior, that makes it more of a personality trait than a disorder. I would like to advocate that you use the phrase anal retentive instead of OCD, because OCD implies that you've got a disorder. Anal retentive just means that you've got a personality quirk where, you just really you're always like super rigidly on time. You've got your day very rigidly planned out. I mean, this is what anal retentive people do. They get very upset if anything throws them off. On the other side, if you're potty trained in too relaxed of a fashion, so you're well beyond 36 months and still using diapers, you can end up with what Freud called an anal expulsive personality, where you have a lack of control. And so all the stuff I just said about an anal retentive person, it's flipped for an anal expulsive person. They are messy, they are disorganized, they tend to be tardy, they have difficulty holding work because they come to work late too often. Things like that. This is a good time to mention that you can be fixated at more than one stage. So if you can imagine a person who's got an oral fixation and then anal expulsiveness, you're going to have a person who's going to have difficulty controlling their eating, for example, or difficulty controlling their alcohol consumption. And so you can end up with these kinds of addictive kinds of behaviors. If you have an orally fixated person who is anal retentive, they may become too controlling about the things that they do with their mouth. And so they may restrict their eating and things like that. So you can have combinations. I'm pleased to report I have both, because I have my mom must have done a better job on the potty training and got me closer to the right time, because I have a little bit of an anal retentive type of personality where I like things to be very organized. You might notice that all my slides are in, linear fashion. I tried to jazz them up a little bit for those non-anal retentive students in the class who don't like things quite so linear as I like them. But yeah, I was toilet trained a month early and it's been downhill ever since, says this cartoon. Well, I mean, I don't think 1 month will probably, really do it. It's probably a gradation, according to Freud, that, there's this range of ideal times for potty training. And if you're way before that, you end up with the anal retentive. And if you're way after that, you end up with the anal expulsive. It's not like 1 month off and everything's messed up. So, all right. Now with the phallic stage, this is kind of complicated because, you've got this gender identity going on here. And I've got a picture of a muscular man because for whether you are male or you are female, it doesn't matter for Freud. If your needs during this stage were not adequately met, you want to present to the world a masculine persona. You want the world to perceive you as having a masculine gender identity. Whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter to him. And so for Freud, if you are female and your needs during the phallic stage were inadequately met, you will be displaying masculine behaviors such as, brace yourselves, these are horrifying, wanting to have a job, wanting your opinion to be considered when your male spouse has already said what he thinks. I wonder if you'd get a completely different presentation if you had a male teacher, because clearly I am not on board with what I'm saying. I'm repeating what Freud said. So if you're female, you'll display what Freud coined penis envy to describe a female who has fixated at the phallic stage. Basically, what he meant by that is that she really engages in a lot of behaviors that she hopes will convince other people that she has a penis. And really, it was about masculinity, right? Not really about the sex organ, but really about, other people perceiving her as having power, status, and things like that women shouldn't have. Now, let's just take a moment to enjoy the irony on Freud, because after I told you I didn't tell you this. He got cancer of the throat from his cigar smoking, and surgeons had to remove part of his soft palate to try and remove as much cancer as they could. As a result, when he gave speeches, too much air was coming out of his nose and people were having difficulty understanding him. By this time, his daughter, Anna Freud, has become a psychoanalytic psychiatrist in her own right. And so he recruited her to deliver his speeches for him. And that's when he coined the term penis envy to describe women who take over a male role / bail their dads out of a situation, right? So who was having the problem in that situation? His daughter, who stepped in to help him out, or him, who was feeling demasculinated, or the correct word is enmasculated? Which of them had the personality quirk, him or her, in objective reality? But he thought it was her, and women like her who wanted to take on male roles. Now, if you're male and you are fixated at the phallic stage, you also want to make sure that everybody in the world perceives you as masculine. So, building up big muscles. Here we have a cartoon where he says, "Dang, I hate to sell it. That rig has made me feel more like a man than any woman ever did," right? He's got his big old truck. When my husband finally fulfilled his fantasy of getting a big, 1-ton pickup truck, dually, he did not care for the fact that every time I get in the truck, I go, "Oh, are we taking the penis truck? Right on." Running around showing everybody how big your penis is with your giant truck. He was using it to tow a trailer and so on. So, he wasn't just doing it. But honestly, he did not care for me for that characterization. He put up with it for a little bit, and then he's like, "Can you please stop saying that?" I thought it was funny, but anyway, the idea is that a male who's fixated at the phallic stage is going to attempt to prove to everybody how masculine he is. So big trucks, big muscles, lots of sexual conquests, fighting, these kinds of things would be signs that a man is fixated at the phallic stage. Now, I have to say, Freud had one more, just, to make sure everybody's offended as we're listening to this. He had one more thing that he had to say about the phallic stage, which is that if a little boy is being raised either by a domineering mother and passive dad, or by a single mother with the absence of a father, either one of those would produce a male who identifies with his mom and takes on her gender identity, including her sexual interests. And so Freud thought that homosexuality, he called it, for males at least, he didn't argue this for females, but for males at least, having a domineering mother and a passive father or an absent father would cause a male to become gay. So he was, in case you've ever wondered, sort of where did this idea come from that, sexual orientation is, brought on by environment. This is where it came from, Freud with his idea about the phallic stage being super important for the development of gender identity, which included for him internalization of sexual interests. All right, so hopefully everybody's offended now. Let's move into a more nice stage, which is the latent stage. And I've got a workaholic in this picture. If you're an adult who left some of your psychic energy behind in the latent stage, where you were supposed to be interested in like succeeding in school and, making platonic friendships with, especially same-sex peers and their platonic friendships. In adulthood, you may still be displaying those behaviors. So you're trying so hard to achieve at work, or you're trying so hard to have a wide circle of platonic friends that you don't appropriately, show the genital stage interests. Here we have a dog that's experiencing that. Since I've been neutered, I have a lot more platonic friends than I used to have. This joke is funny in part, and I don't know if the cartoonist knows, but it's funny in part because it's very Freudian. This idea that if I don't have the genital stage issues, I'll be back here in this latent stage where I'm interested in non-sexual, non-reproductive behaviors. Now, according to Freud, we end in the genital stage, so you can't really get fixated here. Like this is where all of your psychic energy is supposed to land. But I put a picture of, oh, look, husband, wife, and baby. Like that's his goal, is get married, have children. And that's what you're supposed to do in the genital stage. So these are the fixations that we might display. And this is what I meant when I earlier said that Freud had a model of, what a healthy personality looks like, what an unhealthy personality looks like, and so on. Because he thought that, these fixations are evidence of sort of like a less healthy personality. All right, I think, defense mechanisms are next. So I will see you in the next video, and we'll talk about defense mechanisms.